The rain came down in sheets that Tuesday morning, the kind of rain that soaks through your jacket in seconds. Lisa Chen was already running 15 minutes late for her shift at Mercy General Hospital, and the last thing she needed was this weather. She clutched her purse over her head as a makeshift umbrella and hurried down Madison Avenue, her worn sneakers splashing through puddles. The traffic light turned red just as she reached the intersection. Lisa stopped, catching her breath, watching the cars rush past. That's when she noticed him. An older man sat in a wheelchair at the corner, trying desperately to get up onto the sidewalk. The curb was too high and his wheels kept sliding back. He was drenched, his thin jacket doing nothing against the downpour. People walked past him, their eyes straight ahead, umbrellas tilted against the wind. Nobody stopped. Lisa checked her watch. She was already late. Her supervisor had warned her last week about punctuality. One more strike and she could lose this job, and she couldn't afford that. Not with rent due next week and her daughter's school expenses piling up, but she couldn't just walk past him. She jogged over to where the man sat, rain now soaking through her scrubs. Up close, she could see he was probably in his 50s, though the streets had aged him. His hands were rough and dirty, shaking slightly as they gripped the wheelchair's worn handles. "Here, let me help you," Lisa said, positioning herself behind the wheelchair. The man looked up at her, surprised. His eyes were a striking blue, but they were tired, so incredibly tired. "I don't want to be trouble," he said, his voice hoarse. "No trouble at all," Lisa replied, already pushing. The wheelchair was heavier than she expected and the curb was steep, but she managed to get him up onto the sidewalk. She was breathing hard by the time she finished. "Thank you," he said quietly. Most people don't stop. Lisa noticed he was shivering badly. His clothes were soaked through and he had no umbrella, no protection from the rain at all. She looked at her watch again. 20 minutes late now. Her supervisor was definitely going to write her up. But what did that matter compared to what this man was going through? "Come on," she said, gesturing down the street. "There's a coffee shop right there. Let's get you out of this rain." No, I couldn't," he protested. "You've done enough." "Please," Lisa insisted. "At least let me buy you something warm to drink." The man hesitated, then nodded slowly. Lisa pushed his wheelchair down the sidewalk to Joe's coffee house, a small place she passed every morning but never had time to visit. She held the door open and maneuvered him inside. The warmth hit them immediately. A few customers looked up from their tables, their eyes lingering on the man's disheveled appearance before quickly looking away. Lisa pretended not to notice. "What would you like?" she asked. "Just coffee is fine," he said. "Black coffee. How about some food, too? Have you eaten today?" The man's silence was answer enough. Lisa ordered 2 large coffees, a breakfast sandwich for him, and added a couple of muffins. When the barista told her the total, she winced internally. That was her lunch money for the next 3 days. But she handed over the cash anyway. They sat at a small table by the window. The man held the coffee cup with both hands, letting the warmth seep into his fingers. He took a sip and closed his eyes, savoring it. "I'm Lisa, by the way," she said. "Robert," he replied after a moment. "My name's Robert." He unwrapped the sandwich slowly, like he couldn't quite believe it was real. Then he took a bite, and another, eating faster than he probably meant to. Lisa looked away, giving him privacy in his hunger. "I used to have a good life," Robert said suddenly, surprising her. "Had a job, a house, a wife. All of it." Lisa listened, not interrupting. "My wife died 4 years ago. Car accident." His voice cracked slightly. "I couldn't handle it. Started drinking to forget. Lost my job. Lost the house. Lost everything." "I'm sorry," Lisa said softly. "I've been on the streets for 3 years now," Robert continued. He stared down at his coffee. "Some days I forget what it feels like to be treated like a person. People look right through you when you're homeless. Like you're invisible, or worse, like you're dangerous." He looked up at her then, and there were tears in his eyes. "You didn't look through me," he said. "You saw me. You stopped." Lisa felt a lump form in her throat. "Everyone deserves kindness," she said simply. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes while Robert finished his food. Lisa glanced at the clock on the wall. She was now half an hour late. Her supervisor was going to be furious, but somehow sitting here with this man, it didn't seem to matter as much. "I should let you go," Robert said, noticing her looking at the time. "You've been too kind already." Lisa stood up, but then she had an idea. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card from the hospital. On the back, she scribbled her name and the number for the hospital's social services department. "Listen," she said, handing him the card along with a $20 bill from her wallet. "Call this number. They can help you find shelter, maybe connect you with some resources. Promise me you'll call?" Robert took the card and the money, staring at them like they were precious gems. "I promise," he whispered. Lisa smiled. "Take care of yourself, Robert." She squeezed his shoulder gently, then headed for the door. As she stepped back out into the rain, she heard him call after her. "Wait, I don't even know your last name." But Lisa was already hurrying down the street trying to make it to the hospital before she got fired. She didn't look back. Robert sat there long after she left, holding the business card in his trembling hands. He read her name over and over, Lisa Chen, RN. He pulled a small battered notebook from his jacket pocket, the pages warped from moisture. With a pen he'd found weeks ago, he wrote down everything he could remember about her, the hospital name, her first name, the date, the time, what she looked like, and then he wrote something else in larger letters. "The woman who reminded me I'm still human. I will never forget this." He tucked the notebook carefully back into his pocket, close to his heart. The coffee had gone cold, but he didn't care. For the first time in 3 years, he felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Robert wheeled himself slowly to the door. The rain had slowed to a drizzle now. He looked down the street in the direction Lisa had gone, toward the hospital in the distance. He couldn't see her anymore, but he knew she was there, probably helping someone else right now. He made a decision in that moment, sitting in the doorway of that coffee shop. He would get clean. He would find a way off the streets. And somehow, some way, he would find Lisa Chen again. He would repay her kindness. It might take months. It might take years. But he would do it. Robert pulled out the $20 bill she'd given him. Most people in his position would spend it on alcohol or drugs, on anything to make the pain of living on the streets easier to bear. But not this time. This money was different. This money came from someone who saw him as a person. He folded it carefully and put it in his notebook next to where he'd written her name. He would keep it as a reminder of the day a stranger's kindness changed everything. As he wheeled himself back out into the city, Robert didn't know that Lisa had just been written up by her supervisor for being late. He didn't know that she'd face consequences for those 30 minutes of kindness. And Lisa, rushing through the hospital corridors to start her shift, didn't know that those 30 minutes would change someone's entire life. She didn't know that years from now, that moment at the rainy intersection would come back to her in the most unexpected way. Neither of them knew, in that moment, that their stories were now forever connected, that a simple act of human decency would set in motion a chain of events that would transform both their lives in ways they couldn't possibly imagine. All Lisa knew was that she'd done the right thing. And sometimes that has to be enough. 3 months had passed since that rainy morning, and Lisa's life hadn't gotten any easier. If anything, things had gotten harder. She stood in her small kitchen making lunch for her daughter before school. The apartment was tiny, just 2 bedrooms in an old building on the south side of the city. The paint was peeling in the corners, and the radiator made a clanking sound all winter, but it was home. Most importantly, it was what she could afford. "Mom, I need money for the field trip," her daughter called from the bedroom. "It's due by Friday." Lisa closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Another expense she hadn't planned for. "How much, sweetie?" $40. $40. That was groceries for almost a week if she shopped carefully. But she couldn't let her daughter miss the field trip. All the other kids would be going. "I'll have it for you," Lisa promised, making a mental note to pick up an extra shift if possible. Her daughter appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her school uniform. At 14, she was growing up so fast. She looked more like her father every day, which was both beautiful and painful for Lisa to see. "Thanks, Mom," she said, giving Lisa a quick hug. "I know money is tight." "Don't worry about that," Lisa said, forcing a smile. "That's my job to worry about, not yours. You just focus on school." After her daughter left for school, Lisa got ready for her shift. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. She'd lost weight over the past few months, and there were dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. Working double shifts was taking its toll. Her ex-husband was supposed to send child support, but the checks had stopped coming 6 months ago. He'd moved to another state with his new girlfriend and seemed to have forgotten he had a daughter. Lisa had contacted a lawyer, but legal action cost money she didn't have. So she worked. And worked. And worked. At the hospital, her supervisor pulled her aside during her break. "Lisa, we need to talk about your performance," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice stern. Lisa's heart sank. "Is something wrong?" "You've been late 3 times in the past 2 months. And yesterday you made an error with a patient's medication chart. Luckily, another nurse caught it before it became serious." "I'm so sorry," Lisa said quickly. "I've been taking extra shifts and I guess I'm more tired than I realized." "It won't happen again." Mrs. Patterson's expression softened slightly. "I know you're working hard, Lisa. Everyone can see that. But mistakes in this job can be dangerous. Take tomorrow off. Get some rest. Come back when you're sharp," Lisa wanted to argue. She needed those hours. She needed the money. But Mrs. Patterson was right. She'd been running on empty for too long. "Okay," she agreed quietly. "Thank you." That night, Lisa lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling and doing math in her head. Bills that needed paying. Expenses coming up. Her daughter needed new shoes. The car was making a funny noise that probably meant a trip to the mechanic soon. And she had no savings, nothing to fall back on. She thought about that morning 3 months ago, about the man in the wheelchair. Robert. She wondered if he'd called the number she gave him. She wondered if he was okay. Even though she was struggling herself, she didn't regret helping him. She never would. Because kindness wasn't something you only gave when you could afford it. It was something you gave because it was right. Across the city, in a homeless shelter on the east side, Robert lay on a narrow cot, also unable to sleep. But his sleeplessness came from something different. Not worry, but determination. He'd been sober for 93 days. 93 days since that morning in the rain when a nurse named Lisa Chen had treated him like a human being. He'd called the number on the card she gave him the very next day. The social worker had helped him get into a rehabilitation program. The first month had been hell. Withdrawal, cravings, depression so deep he couldn't see any light. There were days he wanted to give up. Days he almost walked out of the program and straight to the nearest liquor store. But then he'd remember Lisa. The way she'd stopped in the rain. The way she'd looked at him without judgment. The way she'd squeezed his shoulder before she left, a simple gesture that said, "You matter." He'd pull out his battered notebook and read what he'd written about her. And somehow he'd find the strength to stay. After 30 days of residential treatment, he'd moved to this shelter. It wasn't much, just a bed and a locker, but it was warm and safe. More importantly, it was alcohol-free. Robert had started attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings every single day. He'd found a sponsor, a man named Tom who'd been sober for 15 years. Tom was patient but tough, calling Robert out when he made excuses and supporting him through the hard moments. "You've got to have a reason," Tom told him during one of their coffee meetings. "A reason that's bigger than the addiction." "What's yours?" Robert had pulled out the notebook and shown Tom the page about Lisa. "I want to find her again," Robert said. "I want to thank her properly. But more than that, I want to become someone worthy of her kindness. She gave me money for food, but I didn't spend it. I kept it as a reminder. I want to give it back to her someday along with interest, if you know what I mean." Tom had smiled. "That's a good reason. Hold on to that." But being sober was only the first step. Robert needed a job, needed to rebuild his life. And that was proving harder than he expected. He'd been a software engineer before everything fell apart. He'd been good at it too, really good. But that was 4 years ago. Technology moved fast and he was behind now. Plus, trying to explain a 4-year gap on a resume was nearly impossible. He'd applied to dozens of jobs, entry-level positions, anything that would give him a chance. But no one wanted to hire a homeless man with a gap in his work history and no current address except a shelter. The rejection emails piled up. "We've decided to move forward with other candidates. Your qualifications don't meet our current needs. We'll keep your resume on file." It was crushing. But Robert refused to give up. He'd started spending his days at the public library, relearning programming languages, teaching himself the new frameworks and technologies that had emerged while he was on the streets. The librarians got to know him, saving him a spot at the computer stations. "Still at it, Robert?" The head librarian, an older woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, would ask. "Every day," he'd reply with determination. One day, Mrs. Rodriguez approached him with an idea. My nephew runs a small tech startup, she said. They're looking for someone to help with basic coding work. It's not much, just part-time minimum wage, but it's legitimate work. Would you be interested? Robert's heart leaped. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. I showed him some of your old work from before, she continued. He was impressed. He's willing to give you a chance despite the circumstances. Don't make me regret vouching for you. I won't, Robert promised. I swear I won't. The interview was scheduled for the following week. Robert borrowed a shirt and tie from Tom and spent hours preparing. He practiced answering questions, reviewed his coding skills, and tried not to get his hopes up too high. The day of the interview, he was so nervous he could barely eat. But the moment he started talking about code, about solving problems and building solutions, something shifted. This was who he used to be. This was who he could be again. The nephew, a young man in his 30s named Kevin, asked him tough questions. Robert answered them honestly, including being upfront about his situation. I messed up, Robert said plainly. I lost someone I loved, and I handled it in the worst possible way. I destroyed my own life, but I'm rebuilding now, one day at a time. I won't lie to you and say I'm fixed. Recovery is ongoing, but I'm committed. I show up. And I'm really, really good at what I do. Kevin studied him for a long moment. You know what? I believe you. When can you start? Robert almost cried right there in the office. Whenever you need me. Monday work for you? Monday is perfect. As Robert left the office that day, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose, direction, hope. He went straight to a meeting that night and shared his news with the group. Everyone applauded. Tom gripped his shoulder proudly. See? Tom said. One step at a time. That's how you do it. That night, back at the shelter, Robert pulled out his notebook. He looked at Lisa's name written there at the $20 bill she'd given him, carefully preserved between the pages. I'm getting there, he whispered to himself. I'm getting there. He still didn't know where exactly Lisa was. He knew the hospital's name, but he didn't have a last name, and hospitals had lots of nurses. He couldn't just show up and ask for Lisa without more information, but he would find her eventually. And when he did, he'd be someone she could be proud of knowing. Someone whose life she'd changed for the better. Meanwhile, Lisa had no idea that her simple act of kindness was bearing fruit across the city. She had no idea that the man she'd helped was fighting his way back to a better life. Motivated in part by her compassion, she was too focused on her own struggles, on keeping her head above water, on being there for her daughter. Some nights when things felt particularly hard, she'd remember random moments from her work, the patients she'd helped, the strangers she'd stopped to assist, the small kindnesses she tried to give when she could, and she'd remind herself that even when life was difficult, even when money was tight and the future was uncertain, those moments mattered. Being kind mattered. She had no way of knowing that one of those moments, one rainy morning 3 months ago, had planted a seed that was growing into something extraordinary. Sometimes the good we do comes back to us, but sometimes it takes years, and sometimes it comes back in ways we never could have imagined. 3 years can change everything. Robert sat in his corner office on the 23rd floor, looking out over the city skyline. It was the same city where he'd spent years sleeping under bridges and in doorways. The same city where he'd hit rock bottom. And now here he was, a senior developer at Tech Forward Solutions, one of the fastest growing startups in the region. The journey from that shelter to this office had been long and hard. That first job with Kevin's small company had been just the beginning. Robert had worked part-time for 6 months, proving himself with every project. He'd moved from the shelter into a tiny studio apartment, furnished with second-hand furniture and a mattress on the floor. But it was his. No one could kick him out at 6 in the morning. He had a key. He had a door that locked. He had privacy. He'd kept going to meetings, kept working with Tom, kept rebuilding, one day at a time, just like they said. After a year, Kevin had offered him full-time work. The pay still wasn't great, but it was steady. Robert saved every penny he could, living as cheaply as possible. No cable TV, no eating out, no luxuries, just work, meetings, and sleep. He'd been sober for a year and a half when a bigger company noticed his work. They'd hired Kevin's startup to build a complex application, and Robert had been the lead developer. The project was a success, and the bigger company offered Robert a job directly, better pay, better benefits, better everything. Robert had been nervous about leaving Kevin after he'd given him a chance, but Kevin had encouraged him to go. "You've got talent, Robert," Kevin had said. "Real talent. Don't waste it out of loyalty to me. Go build something amazing." At the new company, Robert had flourished. He was solving complex problems, mentoring junior developers, and getting noticed by upper management. His work was exceptional because he appreciated it in a way most people couldn't. Every day in that office was a gift, a reminder of how far he'd come from the streets. 2.5 years into his recovery, the company had been acquired. The acquisition was huge, making news in all the tech publications, and Robert, as one of the key developers, received a substantial payout. He'd sat in his apartment staring at the number in his bank account, unable to believe it was real. More money than he'd ever seen in his life. Enough to buy a house, a car. Enough to live comfortably for years. The first thing he did was buy a new notebook. The old one, the one where he'd written about Lisa, was falling apart from being carried around for 3 years. He carefully transferred everything to the new notebook, including the original $20 bill, now worn and faded but still intact. Then he hired a private investigator. "I need to find someone," Robert told the investigator. "A woman named Janet who came highly recommended. A nurse who worked at Mercy General Hospital 3 years ago. First name Lisa, last name Chen. Janet had taken the case. That's not a lot to go on, but I'll see what I can find." 2 weeks later, Janet called him back. "I found her," Janet said. Lisa Chen, registered nurse. Still works at Mercy General, night shift mostly. She has a daughter, 17 years old. Lives in an apartment on the south side. Robert's heart pounded. "Is she okay? I mean, is she doing all right?" There was a pause on the line. "I can send you the full report, but Robert, I'll be honest with you. She's struggling. Working double shifts most weeks. Behind on rent. Her daughter needs some medical treatment that insurance isn't fully covering." Robert felt something twist in his chest. The woman who had helped him when she probably couldn't afford to was now in trouble herself. "Send me everything," he said quietly. When the report arrived, Robert read it 3 times. Lisa was drowning in debt, medical bills for her daughter, who had developed a spinal condition that required surgery. The insurance company was fighting the claim, calling it a pre-existing condition. Lisa was working herself to exhaustion trying to make ends meet, and to make matters worse, the hospital was planning layoffs. Budget cuts. Lisa was on the list because she was newer staff and had some punctuality issues from 3 years ago that were still on her record. Those punctuality issues, Robert knew exactly where they came from. That morning when she'd stopped to help him, when she'd been late to work because of him. He stood at his office window for a long time thinking. He wanted to help her, needed to help her, but he also didn't want to scare her or make her uncomfortable. How do you approach someone 3 years later and say, "Remember me, the homeless guy you helped? Well, now I'm rich and I want to give you money." It sounded crazy. It sounded like a scam. Robert talked to Tom about it at their regular coffee meeting. "I want to help her," Robert said, "but I don't know how to approach this without seeming like some kind of creep who tracked her down." Tom stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "Here's the thing, Robert. Your intentions are good, and that matters. But you're right to be careful. Women, especially women who've been through tough times, they have good reason to be cautious about men who show up out of nowhere with money. It can seem predatory even when it's not. So what do I do? Be transparent, be honest. Give her control of the situation. Maybe meet somewhere public, somewhere she feels safe. Bring the notebook. Show her proof of who you are, and be prepared for her to say no. Say no to money she desperately needs? Pride is a powerful thing, Tom said. Some people would rather struggle than accept what they see as charity. You have to respect that. Robert nodded slowly. I want to do this right. I know you do. That's why you'll figure it out. Meanwhile, across the city, Lisa was having the worst week of her life. She'd just gotten the official notice. Layoffs were happening in 2 weeks, and she was on the list. Her last day would be the end of the month. She sat in her car in the hospital parking lot after her shift, the letter in her hands, and let herself cry. She'd held it together inside, had smiled and thanked her supervisor professionally, but now, alone, she let it out. How was she going to pay for her daughter's surgery now? The insurance company had denied the claim, and the appeal process was taking months. The doctors said the surgery couldn't wait much longer. The condition was getting worse. Lisa had called her ex-husband, something she'd sworn she'd never do again. She'd begged him for help, explaining about their daughter's medical needs. "I don't have that kind of money," he'd said flatly. "You should have planned better." The hypocrisy of it had made her want to scream. He'd abandoned them, stopped paying support, and now he was lecturing her about planning. She'd hung up on him. Now, sitting in her car, Lisa considered her options. They were all bad. She could take out a loan, but with her credit and lack of steady employment, the interest rates would be crushing. She could try a crowdfunding campaign online, but those rarely raised enough money. She could sell everything she owned, but that still wouldn't cover a major surgery. She could ask family, but her parents were retired on fixed incomes, barely getting by themselves. Her brother had his own family and struggles. Lisa leaned her head against the steering wheel. She was so tired, so incredibly tired. Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter. "How was work, Mom?" Lisa wiped her eyes and typed back, "Good, sweetie. Be home soon? Love you." She couldn't fall apart, not yet. Her daughter needed her to be strong. As Lisa drove home that night, she passed the intersection where she'd helped Robert 3 years ago. She didn't remember the specific spot, didn't think about it as she drove past, but Robert remembered. He'd visited that corner dozens of times over the past 3 years. Sometimes he'd stand there in the rain, remembering. Sometimes he'd leave flowers. It was his reminder of where he'd been and how far he'd come. Tonight, standing at that corner once again, Robert made his decision. He would find a way to approach Lisa, to help her, to repay the kindness that had saved his life. He just had to do it right. He pulled out his phone and called Janet, the investigator. "I need your help with something else," he said. "I need to find a way to reach out to Lisa Chen that won't scare her or make her uncomfortable. Can you help me figure out the best approach?" "I might have an idea," Janet said. "Give me a couple of days." 3 days later, Robert's plan was in motion. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Lisa received a formal letter in the mail, delivered to her apartment. It was on official letterhead from a law firm in downtown. The letter requested her presence at a meeting to discuss a matter of significant financial importance related to an unnamed client. It assured her that she was not in any legal trouble and that the meeting would be purely informational. Transportation and compensation for her time would be provided. Lisa stared at the letter, confused. She'd never had dealings with lawyers before. Was this some kind of scam? She called the law firm to verify. Yes, the letter was legitimate. No, they couldn't tell her more over the phone. Yes, she was welcome to bring someone with her to the meeting if she felt more comfortable. Lisa asked her friend Monica, another nurse, to come with her. Monica had agreed immediately. "If it's a scam, at least we'll figure it out together," Monica had said. "But what if it's real? What if someone left you money or something?" Lisa didn't let herself hope for that. Hope had disappointed her too many times, but she agreed to go to the meeting. It was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon. She had no idea that the man waiting in that conference room would be someone whose face she'd barely remember. Someone she'd helped one rainy morning and then forgotten in the chaos of her difficult life. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever. Robert, preparing for the meeting in his apartment, was nervous in a way he hadn't been in years. He laid out the notebook on his table, the one with Lisa's name and the $20 bill. He'd written a letter explaining everything, trying to find the right words. This was it. After 3 years of working, saving, and planning, he was finally going to repay the kindness that had changed his life. He just hoped Lisa would give him the chance to explain. The law offices of Mitchell and Associates occupied the entire 15th floor of a gleaming downtown building. Lisa stood in the lobby with Monica, feeling completely out of place in her one good dress and worn flats. "This is fancy," Monica whispered, looking around at the marble floors and modern art on the walls. "You sure this isn't some kind of mistake?" "I called 3 times to confirm," Lisa whispered back. "They said it's legitimate." A receptionist with a warm smile greeted them. "Ms. Chen, please follow me. Your companion is welcome to wait in our lounge area." Monica squeezed Lisa's hand. "I'll be right here if you need me." Lisa followed the receptionist down a long hallway, her heart pounding. They stopped at a conference room with glass walls and a large table. Inside, a man stood with his back to the door, looking out the window. "Ms. Chen is here," the receptionist announced. The man turned around. Lisa's first impression was that he was younger than she expected. probably in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit. He looked successful, professional. His face seemed vaguely familiar somehow, but she couldn't place it. "Lisa," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Thank you so much for coming. I'm sorry, do I know you?" Lisa asked, confused. The man smiled, though it looked like he might cry. "You do, but you might not remember. My name is Robert Hayes. 3 years ago, on a rainy Tuesday morning, you helped me across a street. I was in a wheelchair. I was homeless. You bought me coffee and a sandwich." Lisa's mind raced back. 3 years ago. A rainy morning. She'd been late to work. There had been a man in a wheelchair struggling with the curb. Her eyes widened. "Oh my God. I remember. I remember helping someone, but you look so different." "I imagine I do," Robert said softly. "I was in a very dark place back then. The darkest place of my life, actually. Please, sit down. I have a lot to tell you, and I promise this will make sense." Lisa sat slowly in one of the leather chairs, her mind spinning. Robert sat across from her and pulled out a worn notebook. "That morning when you helped me, I had been homeless for 3 years, he began. I'd lost my wife, lost my job, lost everything to alcoholism and grief. I was at the end. I'd stopped believing that people cared about people anymore." He opened the notebook and showed her a page. There in shaky handwriting was her name, Lisa Chen RN, the date, a description of what she'd done, and a $20 bill yellowed with age. "You gave me this money," Robert continued, his voice thick with emotion. "You told me to call a number for social services. Most importantly, you treated me like I was a person, not trash on the sidewalk. You saw me when everyone else looked away." Lisa stared at the notebook, at her name written there. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Robert said firmly. "Most people didn't. Most people walked right past me. You were late for work, probably had 100 things on your mind, but you stopped. You spent your time and your money on a stranger. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" "I still don't understand why I'm here," Lisa said quietly. Robert took a deep breath. "That morning changed my life. I went to rehab. I got sober. I got a job. And I promised myself that if I ever made it back, I would find you and thank you properly." He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table to her. "I've done well for myself, Lisa. Very well. I'm a senior developer at a tech company. We were recently acquired and I received a significant payout. And now I want to do something with that money that matters." Lisa opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, financial statements, and a letter. She started reading, but the numbers didn't make sense. They were too big. "I don't understand," she said, looking up at him. "I've set up a trust fund," Robert explained, "for you and your daughter. It will cover her medical expenses, all of them. The surgery she needs, any follow-up care, everything. It will also cover your living expenses for the next 5 years. And there's a college fund for your daughter." Lisa felt the room spin. "What? No, this can't be real." "It's real," Robert said gently. "I know about your situation, Lisa. I know you're struggling. I know the hospital is laying you off. I know your daughter needs surgery that insurance won't cover. I hired an investigator to find you, and I learned all this. I hope that doesn't upset you, but I needed to know how to help." "This is too much," Lisa said, standing up abruptly. "I can't accept this. It's too much money. I just bought you a sandwich. I helped you across a street. That doesn't deserve all this." Robert stood too. "You're right, it doesn't, but you deserve it. Do you know what was in my pocket that morning? A bottle of pills. I was planning to take all of them. I was done, Lisa, finished, but then you stopped. You saw me. You reminded me that kindness still existed in the world. You gave me a reason to try one more time." Tears were streaming down Lisa's face now. "I didn't know. How could you? But that's the thing about kindness, isn't it? We never really know how much our actions matter. You probably helped dozens of people and forgot about it 5 minutes later. But for me, for that moment, you were everything." Lisa sank back into the chair, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Robert said softly. "Let me do this. Not as charity, but as repayment for a debt I can never fully settle. Your kindness saved my life, literally. The least I can do is make sure your daughter gets the care she needs and you have some breathing room to figure out what's next." "But why now? Why wait 3 years?" "Because I needed to become someone worthy of repaying you," Robert said. "I needed to get my life together, to prove to myself that your kindness hadn't been wasted on me. And I wanted to be able to help in a meaningful way, not just show up empty-handed with thanks." Lisa looked down at the documents again. The numbers were staggering, life-changing. Her daughter could get the surgery. She wouldn't have to work herself to death anymore. They could breathe, but it felt impossible to accept. "I need to think about this," she said finally. "This is overwhelming. I need time." "Of course," Robert said immediately. "Take all the time you need. The lawyers here will answer any questions. Everything is legally set up. There are no strings attached, no conditions. The money is yours whether you ever speak to me again or not." "Why would you do that?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Robert said simply. "Because you did the right thing for me when you had every reason not to. Because kindness should be repaid with kindness." Lisa wiped her eyes. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything. That $20 bill in your notebook. Why didn't you spend it?" Robert smiled. "Because it wasn't just money. It was proof that someone cared. I kept it as a reminder on the hard days that I was worth caring about. There were times I could have used it for food or bus fare, but I never did. It was more valuable to me than any amount of money." They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Lisa spoke. "I need to go. I need to process this." "But Robert, can I say something?" "Please. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you got your life back. And I'm glad my small gesture meant something to someone. I've been feeling pretty useless lately, like nothing I do matters. But this knowing that I helped you, that makes me feel like maybe I'm doing something right." "You're doing everything right," Robert said. "Your daughter is lucky to have you. And the world is better because you're in it." Lisa gathered the folder and stood. "Can I contact you?" "Once I've thought about this?" "Absolutely. All my information is in there. Call anytime, day or night." At the door, Lisa turned back. "Robert, thank you. For remembering. For caring enough to find me. That means something too." After she left, Robert sat alone in the conference room for a long time. He pulled out the old notebook and looked at the $20 bill one more time. Then he carefully folded it and put it in an envelope addressed to Lisa, with a note. "You gave this to me when you had very little. I'd like you to have it back now as a reminder that kindness always matters even when we can't see how." In the lobby, Monica rushed over to Lisa. "What happened? Are you crying?" "What did they say?" Lisa looked at her friend, still in shock. "Monica, you're not going to believe this." As they walked to the car, Lisa told her everything. Monica stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, staring at her. "Are you serious right now?" "I have the documents right here," Lisa said, holding up the folder. "It's real. So what are you going to do?" Lisa looked up at the building, at the window on the 15th floor where Robert was probably still sitting. What was she going to do? She thought about her daughter, about the surgery she desperately needed. She thought about the crushing weight of bills and debt that kept her up at night. She thought about the exhaustion of working double shifts and the fear of losing her job. And she thought about that rainy morning 3 years ago, about stopping to help a stranger even though she was late, about doing the right thing even when it was inconvenient. "I'm going to say yes," Lisa said finally. "I'm going to accept his help. Because maybe this is how the universe works. Maybe the good we put out there does come back to us even if it takes time." Monica hugged her tightly. "You deserve this. You deserve good things." "My daughter deserves this," Lisa corrected. "She deserves to be healthy and happy." "You both deserve it," Monica insisted. That night, Lisa sat at her kitchen table with the folder spread out in front of her. Her daughter was asleep in the next room, unaware that their lives were about to change. Lisa picked up her phone and typed a message to Robert's number. "I want to say yes. But first I want to meet with you again, somewhere casual. I want to hear more about your journey. I want to understand who you are now. Is that okay?" The response came within minutes. "That's more than okay. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for giving me the chance to do this." They made plans to meet for coffee the following week. Just coffee, nothing formal. A conversation between two people whose lives had intersected in the most unexpected way. As Lisa got ready for bed that night, she looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time in years, she looked hopeful. Sometimes kindness returns to us in ways we never imagined. Sometimes the people we help become the people who help us. And sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest changes. Lisa didn't know it yet, but accepting Robert's help would lead to something even more meaningful than financial security. It would lead to a friendship, to new opportunities, and to a renewed sense of purpose. But that was still to come. For now, she just had to take the next step, say yes to help, Say yes to hope. Say yes to the possibility that good things could still happen. And for the first time in a very long time, Lisa believed they could. 6 months had passed since that meeting in the law office, and Lisa's world looked completely different. She sat in the waiting room of the hospital, but this time she wasn't here for work. She was here as a family member, waiting while her daughter recovered from surgery. The operation had been a complete success, and the doctor said she'd make a full recovery. Lisa closed her eyes and said a silent prayer of gratitude. Without Robert's help, this wouldn't have been possible. Her daughter would still be in pain, the condition worsening, and Lisa would still be desperately trying to figure out how to pay for treatment. Ms. Chen? A nurse appeared. Your daughter is awake and asking for you. Lisa hurried to the recovery room. Her daughter smiled weakly from the bed, still groggy from anesthesia. Hey, Mom, she said softly. Hey, baby. How do you feel? Tired, but good. The doctor said everything went perfectly. Lisa squeezed her hand gently. Everything is going to be okay now. You're going to be okay. Her daughter looked at her seriously. Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. Why didn't you ever tell me we were struggling so badly? I knew money was tight, but I didn't know how bad it was until Mr. Hayes helped us. Lisa sat down in the chair next to the bed. Because you're the kid and I'm the parent. My job is to worry about those things, not yours. Your job is to focus on school and being 17. But I could have helped. I could have gotten a job. You did help, Lisa said firmly. By being a good person. By working hard in school. By not complaining when we couldn't afford things other kids had. You helped by being you. Her daughter's eyes filled with tears. I'm lucky to have you as my mom. I'm the lucky one, Lisa whispered, kissing her forehead. Later that evening, after her daughter had fallen asleep, Lisa went to the hospital cafeteria. She needed coffee and a moment to process everything. That's where Robert found her. I hope it's okay that I came, he said, approaching her table. The nurses told me the surgery went well. Lisa smiled, gesturing to the empty chair. It's more than okay. And yes, it went perfectly. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for making this possible. Robert sat down, looking relieved. I'm so glad. How are you holding up? Better than I have in years, Lisa admitted. It's strange, not constantly worrying about money. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know? Like this can't really be happening. It's really happening, Robert assured her. You can relax. Over the past 6 months, Lisa and Robert had developed an unexpected friendship. They'd met for coffee several times, sharing their stories more deeply. Lisa had told him about her marriage falling apart, about the struggle of being a single parent, about the guilt of not being able to give her daughter everything she deserved. Robert had shared more about his journey too. The grief of losing his wife, the descent into addiction, the years on the streets, the long, hard climb back to sobriety and stability. Can I tell you something? Robert said, now stirring his coffee. Helping you these past months has given me more purpose than anything else I've done since getting sober. It's reminded me why I fought so hard to get my life back. You're giving me too much credit again, Lisa said. No, I'm giving you exactly the right amount, Robert countered. You know, I've been thinking about something. About all the people out there who are where I was 3 years ago. People who just need someone to see them, to give them a chance. Lisa nodded. There are so many of them. I want to do something about that, Robert said, leaning forward with excitement in his eyes. I want to start a foundation, something that helps homeless people who are struggling with addiction, providing not just shelter and food, but rehabilitation programs, job training, mental health support, everything they need to rebuild. That sounds amazing, Lisa said, genuinely impressed. Here's the thing, though, Robert continued. I don't know how to do it alone. I'm a tech guy. I know code, not social services. But you've spent years helping people. You understand what people need. You have compassion and practical sense. Lisa's eyes widened. Are you asking me to help you? I'm asking you to partner with me, Robert said. Come work for the foundation. Help me build something that actually makes a difference. You mentioned you were thinking about going back to school for your nurse practitioner degree. What if instead you got a degree in social work or nonprofit management? The foundation would pay for it. And when you're done, you'd help run the programs. Lisa sat back stunned. Robert, that's incredible. But I don't know if I'm qualified. You're the most qualified person I know, Robert insisted. You've lived it. You understand what it's like to struggle, to need help but be too proud to ask for it. You know how to treat people with dignity. That's what this foundation needs. Can I think about it? Lisa asked. Take all the time you need. But Lisa, I really hope you'll say yes. We could help a lot of people together. That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Robert's offer, the chance to do something meaningful, to help people the way she'd always wanted to help people, but on a bigger scale. She thought about the nurse she'd been, running from room to room, never having enough time to really connect with patients the way she wanted to. She thought about the countless homeless people she'd seen over the years, wanting to help but never having the resources. This could change that. This could let her make a real difference. The next morning, she called Robert. Yes, she said simply. I want to do this. She could hear the smile in his voice. Really? Really? Let's build something amazing. Over the next year, the foundation took shape. They called it Second Chances, and they worked tirelessly to make it more than just another charity. They wanted it to be a comprehensive program that actually helped people rebuild their lives. Robert handled the business side, securing funding and managing finances. Lisa designed the programs, working with counselors, social workers, and medical professionals to create a system that addressed the whole person, not just their immediate needs. They opened their first facility 18 months after that conversation in the hospital cafeteria. It was a converted warehouse on the east side of the city, transformed into a clean, welcoming space with sleeping quarters, a medical clinic, counseling rooms, a computer lab for job training, and a cafeteria that served healthy meals. The day they opened, Lisa and Robert stood at the entrance, greeting the first people who came through the doors. Many were suspicious at first, used to programs that promised help but delivered judgment. But slowly, word spread. This place was different. The people who ran it actually cared. One afternoon, about 6 months after opening, a young woman came to the facility. She was in her 20s, thin and tired-looking, with a baby on her hip. I heard you help people, she said to Lisa at the front desk. I need help. My boyfriend left us. We've been staying in my car. I don't know what to do. Lisa came around the desk and looked at the young woman with the same compassion she'd shown Robert all those years ago. You came to the right place, Lisa said gently. We're going to help you. First, let's get you and your baby something to eat, and then we'll talk about what you need. The young woman started crying. I thought no one cared. People care, Lisa assured her. Come on. You're safe now. As Lisa helped the young woman get settled, Robert watched from across the room. He thought about that rainy morning, about Lisa stopping when everyone else walked past, about how one moment of kindness had created a ripple that kept spreading. That young woman and her baby would get help. They'd get counseling, childcare support, job training, and eventually housing. They'd get a second chance, just like Robert had gotten, and it all traced back to a nurse who was late for work but stopped anyway. Who bought coffee for a stranger? Who saw a person instead of a problem? 2 years after Second Chances opened, they were serving over 300 people. They'd expanded to a second location and were planning a third. Their success rate was remarkable. Over 60% of people who completed their program remained sober and housed. After 2 years, Lisa had completed her degree in social work and was now the foundation's director of programs. Her daughter was thriving in college, studying to become a doctor, inspired by her mother's compassion and Robert's story of recovery.